Friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Today we welcome as a guest Paul Lammers. Paul is the CEO of Triumvira Immunologics. They're based out of Austin, Texas, but with team members all over the globe, really. And Triumvira is doing something unique in the world of cancer therapeutics. They are working to leverage the body's natural immune system to fight against cancer. Who Paul is to me, and you will hear it throughout the conversation, is joy. Paul loves to jump out of bed every morning and do the work that he gets to do. Paul is joyful in his interactions with his colleagues, with his family, with those in his network. Joy really does describe how Paul shows up to the world. In this conversation, we dive into the parallels between parenting and leadership in an organization. We dive into work-life balance and how do you create that in this post-COVID world, and challenging conversations for CEOs to have, his peer CEOs to have with their teams in the next week. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Paul Lammers. Paul Lammers, welcome to the show. So excited to have you as a guest today.
Thanks, Jeff, and great to be here. Looking forward to talk to you.
Yeah. You just heard me do a very brief introduction of you and who you are to me. Would love for you to start us off by letting us know what you're up to in the world.
Absolutely. So I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Triumvira Immunologics, an exciting cell therapy company, and cell therapy for your listeners is one of the hottest areas in immunology. We try to basically help a patient's own immune system fight their own cancer. So that's really exciting. Next to that, I'm on the board of two other immuno-oncology companies, one public company, one a private. Also, that is very exciting to see where we can take their technologies. And then I'm a very active kind of father in the life of my three daughters and the three and now soon to be four grandchildren. So it's all good. Life is great. I mean, I love it. Like I said, I love to wake up and go to work and do work stuff with the family, my dogs. I mean, everything is awesome.
That's great. That's great. I'm a dad of two girls. I'm much younger, so I know the joys and
fast. I can tell you that, man. It goes really fast. Such a cliche, but it really goes. It goes fast.
It does. It does. I said to my wife the other night, my oldest is 15, and I said, the older they get, it's just the problems get bigger.
It's true. But also it's fun. I find it fun interacting with your kids, over their, lifetime, which is great. And when they get into, later stage of high school, like where Joel is now there, and then into college, and then after college, you get different types of discussions, but it's very interesting. It's about relationships. It is about, hey, Dad, would you mind having a look at my resume because I'm applying for a new job? All these things, right? And you get into what's happening in the world, whether it's a political situation or whatever it might be. It's just fun to interact and talk to them and share, your knowledge and whatever kernels of wisdom you can give them. And also, I learned a lot from them. I mean, they are very, we always told the girls, you need to be very independent for any partner too. You need to be able to drive your own career, your own life. And that is awesome to see and see how they grow and develop, and especially when they become mothers, how they are as mothers to their children and compared to your own experience. I think that is one of the most satisfying things as a grandfather or a grandparent, to see how your kids are as parents themselves, which I think is fascinating.
I'd love to just ask you about that. I mean, I have loads of questions for today, but I was just having coffee with a colleague and we were reflecting on, he has even younger children than me, but I always find the parallel between parenting and leadership in an organization to be very interesting. It's not a total apples to apples, but I think there's some really interesting parallels. As a dad to adult children, now a grandfather, what do you see as the parallels between parenting and leading in an organization?
And so for me, as a CEO of a company, when I really got involved in the business of pharmaceutical and biotech drug development with increasing responsibilities, I noticed it was really up to me to set the course and stuff. And you learn from what you pick up at home and how to address certain things. For me, whether it's you raising kids or whether you work or run a business, the two most important things are information and communication. And that is, you need to always talk to your children. And we always told them, look, no matter what happens, no matter we have, a quarrel, something happened at school or whatever, we always talk about it, right? And sometimes the kids roll their eyes, it's like, oh, here we go again, we need to talk. But, but it is so helpful because they appreciate it and they can sometimes also talk through their emotions, and then, it quiets down and things, and when they're upset or something, whatever it might be. That really helps. I also feel in a business setting, look, I'm a real believer in teamwork. I truly think the team is more than the sum of parts. And so for me, the role of the CEO is very simple. You need to build a team, you need to raise the funding, the money. And I think a building team is one of the most critical things and within that hiring part, when I interview people, there's always 3 questions that I ask. 1, can you do the job? I.e., do you have the skills? And that's mostly reflected in your resume, right? 2, do you want to be part of Triumvira? Do you really think this is your great next step for you? And thirdly, can we stand to work with you? And that last part is really important because the fit within the team drives the success of that individual in the company, as well as helps your team as a company go, and broaden and get more experience. So, and people always, like you did, start laughing when I ask that question, but it's absolutely true. And sometimes the challenge that I find to do interviews with people is that people can still BS themselves to 8 interviews in a row, and turns out when you hire them, they're a dud. That happened to me only once in my life, in my career, but and I'm thinking, so why was this individual so different when he interviewed them and came into the business? But other than that, I think that, you have this kind of, and a lot of people say the decision to hire somebody happens in the first 4 seconds of an interview. When you stand up behind your desk, you meet somebody, you shake the hand, look them in the eye type thing. And I think there's some truth to that, absolutely. And anyway, so I think that team building is important, information, communication. I remember one of my earlier jobs when I was chief medical officer of a big company, I was criticized by the CEO. They said, Paul, you impart too much confidential information with your employees. I said, look, we're all professionals, right? We're all professionals, we're all adults in the room here. So I share a lot of information because employees, if you give a talk and you don't answer a certain question or you evade an answer, they sense that right away. I mean, people are not dumb, right? They're very smart. So especially dealing with all the scientists and clinicians that we have in our they're really smart people. So I said, if you do that, people right away say, oh, you didn't answer that, right? There must be something going on here. So I'd rather be very open, but also if it is confidential, I say, guys, this is between us here, right? It's not for your spouse, your uncle, your grandfather. This is us or your friends, right? Especially when you become a public company, that is really sensitive issue, right? Because the whole issue about insider trading and the risk of that, etc. But I said, look, they value the fact that I share confidential information with them because they truly feel that they're part of the team, that their opinion is important. And the other thing I always tell people is that, look, anybody in the company can have a great idea, whether you're an executive vice president or you're a administrative assistant. I want to listen to all ideas because everybody can have a fantastic idea. And we together as that, and if you listen to everybody, they also, the people in the lower, levels of the organization appreciate the fact that you listen to them and that you even are willing to take on a suggestion that they propose. So for me, I think information, whether you sell, pencils, bicycles, or pharmaceutical products, these are the 2 key things that makes or breaks a business, information and communication.
Yeah. And As you were talking about this intuition of people knowing that you're hiding something, I came back to my kids. They know.
Oh, they sense that really.
They know. So I think those are wise words, whether you're a parent or an executive. I just sense, Paul, that you have been around the block several times in your career, and there's that what you just even expressed has taken time to get to.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a quote by John Ruskin, who says that the highest reward for a person's toil is not what they get for it, but what they become or who they become by it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, who have you become? We could go to your resume and see.
Yeah, no. The person that, great question, Jeff. And the person who I've become over the years is one who is not afraid to voice an opinion, to take on a new challenge. It's something that I was the youngest of five in my family. I was the Benjamin of the family. And, whenever something needed to happen in our household, my mother always said, well, Paul, that's nice, but let one of your brothers do this. So I always had the feeling, I came out of my youth, basically, the idea, well, am I uncertain? Can I do this? Can I not do this? And I've learned over the years, and I tell people, sometimes in your career, you need to make a bold move and go for it. If you think that that's what your passion is, you want to go, just do it, right? I mean, I remember vividly, I moved from New Jersey to Texas for a job as head of clinical and regulatory. I've never worked in regulatory, never. Yeah, okay, interacted with colleagues from regulatory affairs. And I'm driving down, so from New Jersey to Texas, and I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to do this? But you take it on, you take on the challenge. I think, well, if you have a healthy set of brains and you're willing to read up, and then you talk to some experts in the field, before you know it, you become a discussant at the table. People turn to me and say, hey, Paul, what do you think about this? So they want to, even experts in the field, they want to hear what I feel about it. So you gain that confidence. And so therefore, I've on purpose in my career done a lot of different parts of the pharmaceutical and biotech business, from clinical development to medical affairs to regulatory, quality, medical information, safety, you name it. So on purpose, why? Because I wanted to understand the business so I can appreciate what the various functions, the challenges that they have, which is sometimes not visible or understandable by other functions. But if you've been involved in that, then you appreciate what their challenges is. And so I think that has helped me become a more, call it a steady, healthcare professional in this drug development world, which is fascinating and it's fun to work in. And that just made me a really, happy camper, so to say. I mean, I love what I'm doing, and I love interacting with people. I'm a real people person. After I finished medical school, I went into pathology as a residency, but I quickly realized, the patients come in on slides, right? And I spent 8 hours a day looking through the microscope, but I love to interact with people. I miss that. So I decided I have to make a change. So I decided to move into the pharma world. And interestingly enough, a lot of other residents that I never knew, physicians who were on training, said, Paul, I heard the move that you made, and I'm really impressed because I have the feeling I'm stuck in this rut of doing my residency training and go to the specialty thing.
Yeah.
But I don't really think I like it. But I'm afraid to step out of it because it's like, you're on this treadmill, it keeps going, right? And I made a bold move, and it allowed me to develop a career in an international world. I traveled all over the world. I met so many interesting people, saw fantastic places. I'm a European by background, so I'm a Dutchman originally. I'm now an American, but so growing up, my parents took us everywhere. I've seen every capital in Europe. So because of that, I was intrigued in different languages, different cultures, different, countries. So I love to travel. I love to meet more people. There's so many, look, I don't know what your bucket list is, Jeff, but my bucket list still has quite a few things on it. And funny story, about 4 years, just before the pandemic hit it, I organized a surprise trip for me and my wife as a wedding anniversary gift. And so we went a week to India. We had been to India before. We went a week to India, then we went away to Bhutan, and we climbed 4 days in the Himalayas. Now, I can tell you, I mean, if I'd known how tough it was going to be, I'd never signed up for this. And it was tough. But man, you feel so accomplished when you do it. So it's not, look, this is not, Mount Everest and the K2 thing, but it's at a lower level, but still it was like this, 4 days. I mean, like this. I mean, so it was tough. It was rainforest and there were leeches everywhere, your skin and whatever. I mean, the whole thing. And then after that, we spent 4 days on the Maldives, which was perfect. That's a nice relaxation after those. But it was just an incredible experience, and these people are so nice, and these cultures are fascinating. Whether it's in India or Bhutan, it doesn't matter. I mean, and I love to see that, experience that. And so I love to interact with people. I love communicating with people. I think that's my forte, I suppose.
No. You're pointing to something really interesting, Paul. I've had this experience where I've been on this entrepreneurial journey for 12 years, and I have friends who look at me or have looked at me and talked to me and said, "Oh, I'm so envious." Kind of like the people, the residents that would say to you, "Oh, I feel stuck." I've had people, and I think there's a part of us, I think you and I are cut from a similar cloth, that we don't really even notice it. I kind of, when they acknowledge me, I'm like, yeah, it's bold, but I downplay it a little bit. It's just, they ask me the secret, and I say, I don't know. It's just who I am. Yeah. So I'm wondering, because you're in a space where you want to cultivate boldness from your administrative assistants to your bench scientists to your executive leadership team. You want to cultivate boldness. And so I'm wondering, what are the conversations that you have with your folks to cultivate boldness in a world where while many people wish they could be bold, they kind of settle for whatever hand of cards or set of cards they're dealt, and they just sort of, okay, this is what I got. How do you engage with people to cultivate boldness?
Well, it's a great question, Jeff. So I just want to go back for a sec. That has to do with training and development of employees. So I think, and I tell everybody, to the team, especially the scientist side, I said, look, it's very important that you do personal and professional development. And I tell the scientists, the scientists have a very, tunnel vision, right? They love to do the experiments, have their own bench, do their work in the lab, and then after that, sit in their cubicle and do the analysis and whatever. And you need that because that data drives the future of the company as well. But I said, guys, let's take a step back. Where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And they look at me like, what kind of odd question is that? I said, no, real. I mean, think about this. Where do you want to be? And I take as an example, I tell people, do you want to be the CEO of Merck? Now, I'm not the one who can make you the CEO of Merck. That's up to the board of Merck to decide. But can I help you do some training to make you more eligible to become that kind of candidate? And so I said, you need to take a step back. I said, there's only one person who takes care of your career, and that's yourself. I can help you do some stuff, but at the end, it is your career. It's not my career. I have my career, right? I mean, but you need to, and that gets back to the boldness thing. Sometimes, and I tell people sometimes, your career goes like this, and sometimes you have to take a step like this in order to grow like this. Because, you're with the ceiling here, and you make a side move. And sometimes it's even like this a bit, in terms of salary, whatever it is. But I have the chance again to grow. And, you need to appreciate that. And, it is, look, I worked a lot in the northeast of the US, and I moved south. And look, I love living and working in Texas. Austin is a phenomenal city to live in and work in. But I've had scientists who said to me, well, Paul, I want to grow as a scientist. I said, look, I think you have a great career ahead of you, but you need to be willing to pick up your family and move to the Northeast or to the Bay Area, because that's where you have a lot of companies, a lot of opportunities. Yeah, but I want to stay in Austin. I said, look, I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I love the city too, but sometimes you need to be bold enough. And we've done it, my wife and I have done it several times, pick up the family and move. Is it easy? No. But again, it gets back to information and communications. So I think the kids will appreciate that if you sit down with them and chat about, hey, this is a great opportunity for daddy. We're going to do this. Is you have a chance to meet new friends, new teachers. And we did it quite a few times, even when the girls were in high school. And as you know, that's a very sensitive time especially at that age. But they benefited tremendously from it. I always say my girls never had a chance to really shoot roots somewhere and grow roots, but they have learned to become very versatile, to meet with new people, to communicate well with new people, make new friends, meet new teachers, So, I think that's perhaps where the boldness comes into play. I think you really have to basically tell people, look, think a bit about where do you want to be in 5 years? And sometimes, especially if you said, look, I'm doing this job, but in my heart, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't think you can't do it, because with a healthy set of brains, as I said earlier, you read up on stuff before you know it, and you can truly pursue your passion, because passion is really critical. And I always told my girls, and the most important thing in your professional career is that you wake up and have fun, to jump out of bed and go to work. If you don't have that, you need to seriously reconsider what the hell you're doing. Because, if we spend 8, 10, or 12 hours a day, on work, depending on, the week, the day, whatever, it needs to be some fun too. You need to have that passion, to make it happen. I love the idea that I'm trying to develop drugs that might treat cancer, right? I mean, what better thing is there in drug development to try to treat a nasty disease that we're all been faced with or experience in family, friends, you name it. So, but I tell my girls, it's always been so important, to do this. Do what your heart, because I remember I have 3 daughters, and, some of my friends said, well, don't you think it's a pity that none of them went to medical school? I said, look, it's their career, it's their life. I mean, look, I'm going to enjoy whatever they do. If they have fun doing what they're doing, that's awesome. That's enough for me. I mean, right? You see them evolve and develop and mature and become strong, independent women. Hey, I can enjoy it each and every day. So, it doesn't have to do with if they will become doctors or not. I mean, so, if that's where,
Yeah, and you've painted this picture of an important picture on the I'll call it the meta side, that these big, bold decisions. I'm wondering also about the day-to-day boldness that's required to ultimately make some breakthroughs on an issue, on development, because life is lived out in the mundane. The emails, the meetings, the time in front of the microscope. The quote unquote the mundane. What about the boldness in the moment by moment boldness to choose to push the envelope of their own abilities, of the organization's capabilities, or take the safe route? What are the conversations you're having to cultivate that level of boldness?
Well, I think it starts, I mean, I remember I moved from pharma to biotech, and I like small biotech. Why? Because you have a small group of motivated individuals who want to try to make something happen.
Yeah.
And I've had the chance to join big pharma company, and I was very close to signing up there, and I'm thinking, it has 100,000 employees. So I'm going to be here. Yes, I'm going to be the head of a business unit, but there's still 5 layers to the top, right? So I will never interact with executive management. It takes forever. And that's the whole thing. I mean, the decision that you and I can make here in a small biotech, I can make a decision in 5 minutes with one of my executive team members. That would take 4 months in pharma. And I'm sorry, I don't have the time or the patience to do that. I mean, it drives me nuts. So I say, everybody knows you need to make this decision. And it takes 4 months of debates and meetings and yes, no. No, if we decide in 5 minutes, now that's a boldness to it, because some of these decisions have major implications for the organization.
Yeah.
Right? And also that's why it's really good to have a great interaction with your board of directors, right? Because obviously, they ultimately are the ones who comment on the strategy of the company. You like to keep them a bit away from the operations side of things, but on the strategy, that is key, right? So if you decide, guys, we really need to do this, right, and you're passionate about this, and you can convince them, and you can get them to come on board, that's great. I mean, so I think that and I encourage people. I said, look, I hate micromanagement. I hate it with a vengeance. I hate to look over your shoulder 3 times a day, Jeff, and say, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done it? Because it drives you nuts. It drives me crazy. Mm-hmm. I hire people based on experience also. So I trust them to do their job. We all know we set corporate objectives for the year, that we set individual performance objectives for the year. And then I allow people to work independently and get it done with their teams. Now, of course, we have team meetings and the update meetings, and we have management team meetings, so we get updates all the time. But I like to give people that independence because they have experience. That's the reason why we hired them. I'm not going to question suddenly somebody's experience if they've done a job already for 20 years and know exactly what needs to get done. So I trust that, and that's something that people appreciate a lot. So I think that's, I think that truly helps allowing people to make decisions, so I allow them to be bold themselves. I mean, to say, look, if they come to me and say, Paul, I discussed within my team, and this is the way forward. I said, look, I appreciate that. Now, it's a very democratic type of thing, but sometimes you still have to make an executive decision. I said, guys, I hear both sides of this, but I decided we're going this way. And that's the role of the CEO as well. You sometimes need to make, and sometimes that decision is tough. And the one function who is just like, well, okay, you need to talk about that. We need to talk this out. But you can understand, and I listen to you, and I listen to your arguments, which were great. But at the end of the thing, I think for the company, it's best that we go this way.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really get about you, Paul, is you put yourself in a situation and you model the way in terms of boldness. It's what I sense is it's not something you preach. Maybe you talk about it on occasion.
No, right.
Make bold decisions and trust them to do that. But what I really hear is you are modeling the way around boldness, in the big picture, but also in the day-to-day. That modeling the way is your way of making it safe for people to do likewise.
Yeah. And I always said, look, guys, to err is human, right? So I said, look, we all made mistakes. And I fully appreciate that. So therefore, if there is a mistake, but you have to own up to the mistake. And said, look, something went wrong. Sorry, that was my thing. Okay. Pity that it happened. Well, let's see as a team how we can help solve this issue. What I hate is people try to brush something under the rug and hopefully nobody finds it. It will always come out. It will always come out. Yeah. Especially in our world of biotech. If we try to get funding done with venture capitalists, they will do their diligence, and man, are they smart, and they dive into everything, every folder, every file. So don't think you can bury something, because that ain't happening. Yeah. And what I see happening is interacting with companies, doing the diligence myself on companies. A company did, for instance, 7 experiments. 4 show data this way. The other 3 show data this way. We don't like the 3. Forget about those. We just talk about the 4. I said, guys, do you think that really, the VCs will find out what happened with those 3 that went the other way, right? So you can say, well, the majority of the data, I said, fine, but you need to be open about this because you gain credibility. You get brownie points for sharing also the weak spots and say, guys, this was tough. We don't know exactly what happened, but guess what? This was the data, and people appreciate it. You get brownie points for it because it will always come out.
Yeah.
But you need to own up to your mistakes and say, that was me, and it's stuff happens. That happens in the clinical setting, in the clinic, in treatment of patients. And it happens in a drug development situation with us in the biotech company.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would submit that everything we've been talking about are conversations that people aren't having enough. But I'd like to cast the name of the show right explicitly: conversations life science leaders aren't having, and ask, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear me say conversations life science leaders aren't having?
Well, I think at this time and age in 2023, it is about work-life balance in the company, how you create that. Obviously, we went to a pandemic, which was tough. Everybody's working from home. We have people in the company that from Seattle to Florida and Boston to San Diego. So we invented social distancing before it became a necessity, right? But still, that means is you requires all the communication to keep everybody together on the same page. But I honestly think work-life balance, we realize, and look, I'm a baby boomer, and it's clear that the millennials and the other generations coming up now, but is it currently now is Generation Alpha, I think, it's a different thing. It's a different mindset. For them, work-life balance is way more important. They also want to work in a company that has a high level of social responsibility. And that's just different. And perhaps for me as a boomer, sometimes it's somewhat difficult to understand. It's like, so that's important to them? But it is, you need to listen to them, understand them. I notice in my daughters and their husbands, it's just a different mentality has evolved, which is great because I remember I was chief medical officer for Serono, a big biotech company, and we always had discussions about work-life balance. Why? Because there was no balance. It was all work, right? Now, it attracted a certain type of professional who wanted to work really hard and was compensated really well because there was no other biotech that paid better than Serono, to be honest. So you get a certain group of people who said, look, we work really hard. We spend here 80 hours a week, whatever in the company, but you get paid well for it, which was great. But now it's just a different world. So you need to have, and I don't think we talk a lot as CEOs about that work-life balance and how to make that happen. For instance, the whole thing about the back to work issue post-pandemic. So what do you do with employees, right? So look, I love to interact with people. So I love to be in my office. I love to see other employees in the office. I love to chat with them, not just about work, but also about, hey, how was your son's soccer match last weekend? I mean, that's stuff that, that's a human interaction thing. Now, for other people, especially I understand for families with young children, working from home is fantastic. Right? I mean, we know all the challenges, what it is with daycare, with kindergarten, with schools, so I fully appreciate that. So we decided, let's go back 2 days a week into the office. So Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then about a month ago, we had a little evaluation session where we said, okay, well, how is it working? And I can tell you, one woman told me, she said, Paul, the Tuesday in the office is a royal pain for me. Why? Because I have to go home during lunch to walk my dog because my husband is away, but he's at home on Thursday. He's working from home. So on Thursday is not a problem, but Tuesday is. I said, look, I fully appreciate that. So now we decided, look, you pick your 2 days in the week. Whether it's Monday, Friday, Tuesday, whatever. You pick the days, right? Everybody does appreciate that this kind of, call it the hybrid type of work, is perhaps an ideal solution. I think one of the biggest Gallup surveys recently showed that about 60% of interviewees said that they like this kind of hybrid in the office and at home. We like to give people the flexibility. If like one woman said, I have 2 kids to deliver to school between me and my husband. The schools on both different sides of the town. So if I have to do both, it becomes a royal pain for me than to still try to get on the road and be stuck in traffic for an hour. I fully understand that. So I think you need to have that flexibility, but also realizing that the world has changed in terms of this kind of, in the office. And I call it work-life balance. I mean, I think that, I understand, I appreciate that the newer, the generation behind us, the millennials now, but it's 25 to 40 years of age, have a different view on that, different interests. And I fully understand, so 2 of my daughters have a full at home job now. Fantastic for them. It's great. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that.
And you've touched on communication here a number of times. I'm wondering, as you think about strategy and alignment around the strategy, how has your view of alignment changed or had to modify given the dispersed team and now on top of an already dispersed team, a work from home hybrid option? How has your approach to alignment changed given all that dynamic?
Well, it's a great question, Jeff. So I think we need to realize some companies say, well, our company doesn't have strategy. Well, strategy is what you do. So how do you go from point A to point B? That's what the strategy is, really. I mean, you have different roads you can pick to go from point A to B, but that's the strategy. What are you doing as a company? Yeah. So if you said, look, we have a set of corporate objectives for the year, right? From that, you develop individual performance objectives, right? Against which you will be judged in the end of the year. That has an impact on your bonus, right? You have a ratio between how we did as a company against corporate, as well as how you did against your personal objectives. That helps drive the strategy in terms of as a corporation, because what are we going to do this year, as well as you as an individual. Now, people have a job description. So if I hire somebody for a certain job, that comes with a job description, so that person knows what is expected from him or her. And these individual performance objectives are more like, what extra things can you do this year that would support our corporate objectives? And when it comes to corporate objectives, I find it really important that everybody in the organization, not just the management team, but everybody down to the lowest level, can look at the corporate objectives and say, hey, my contribution is on point A, B, or C. I really help the company do this, because that really helps in the alignment on the strategy. And people say, look, I know what I'm doing each and every day helps the company, helps me, but also helps the company. So I think that's when it becomes strategy. I think he became very clear about what needs to get done and how we're going to do it and how we're going to operate, because that's really what strategy is. How do you do things?
So, and I like to always get into nuance, because I think there's a lot of, it could be really helpful, because there's people, your colleagues are walking this road. Maybe there are a couple steps behind you. What, as you think about that employee in Seattle, for example, who is in their home, you don't have an office of, there's an office of one, and you think about one of your team members in Seattle. Is it setting those objectives and trust that in their competence, their personal accountability? What is the conversation you're having with that team member in Seattle that who virtually never interacts with another colleague in person? How is it that you keep that flame for the mission, for the vision, for that objective or strategy? What is the conversation you're having with them to keep that fire hot?
Well, it gets back to the discussion we just had about information communication, right? So I think for that individual in Seattle, she's fantastic. She's our a senior director of clinical operations. She's awesome. But she knows how to run clinical trials, and that's really key for us, right? Of course, she's part of a clinical team, so she meets them on a daily basis at Zoom calls and team calls and whatever it is, right? And then we have our own all hands Zoom call every other or Teams meeting every other week. So we have about 70 people on the call, which is awesome. So I want to make sure that people feel that they're part of this community, right? They're part of Triumvira. You have colleagues in your own functional group, but also all the other colleagues on manufacturing or research, you name it, finance, it doesn't matter. So I think that's how you cultivate this kind of interaction. But most of these individuals working from home, they're very happy that they're working from home. They like that, but they also realize that, yes, look, I understand. I grew up, as I said, I've been in pharma biotech for 34 years. So there were years where I showed up at work every day with my suit and tie on, because that's how pharma was. And I never questioned that, and I don't mind wearing a tie, but I'm so accustomed to that for me, being in the office, I love being in the office. It gives a kind of, hey, I have a great office myself, a nice view, but whatever. It's more about that interaction with others. I thrive on that. And ideally, you have everybody in one building where, as I said, I like to walk out of my office, talk to somebody in the cubicle, not just about work or another office, but, about stuff in general, right? This is human interaction. For some people, therefore, it is more comfortable working in a work environment. People come into an office, and others, they work from home. But at the end of the day, they know what the strategy is. They know what they're being charged to do and take care of. And of course, they have their own functional head that they work with in their own teams. And look, I like to talk to anybody. And I keep telling everybody, I said, look, after somebody's hired, I said, look, welcome to the team. If there's anytime, anything you want to chat with me about, look, my door is always open. Well, now it's closed from the office, one. But, you have my email, you have my phone number, you can send me a text, you can send me, a message to Teams. I'm always there. I mean, I want to help you and also answer your questions and make sure you understand exactly what is expected of you. And of course, most candidates during the interview process always say, Paul, what do you expect from me in the next 3, 6, 12 months type thing? So we'll talk through that. So I think that it all comes down to the frequency of communication, being open, being honest, and be available. I mean, for me, leadership is visibility as well. I like to see people see. And that's why when I go to, we have our research team and process development is in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. We have our own manufacturing suite in South San Francisco. So I'm in Austin here where the corporate headquarters is. I like to go there because it's important. And I just go there and work from an office, having team meetings there while I'm there. But I want to show to people, hey, Paul shows up at 7:30 at the office here in Hamilton and leaves at 6 o'clock at night. Right? So he's here the whole day working, right? And of course, having meetings, whatever, but I just want to show that I'm there, right? And I think that's important for all management team, that they show visibility, and again, I like the idea from people working at home because they say, Paul, I really have to run an errand, right? And run that errand. I'm fine with it. We know that because also in a small company, there's no way to hide. There's no place to hide. Everybody contributes to the overall thing. And if somebody's not carrying their weight or not doing their job, it becomes obvious pretty quick. In pharma, with 100,000 people, you can hide yourself pretty well, right? But in biotech, there is no hiding. This is it. What you do, it's there. It's shown. You're going to be judged against it. And if you just don't feel we don't think you are the right member for the team, then we'll just part ways and hope you have a successful rest of your career.
Yeah.
Jeff is furiously right.
Well, I don't want to forget because my wife's a math teacher, and so she's trained me to think in formulas.
Yeah.
There's and it's imperfect what I'm about to say because I'm sure there's more, but there's 3 characteristics that I sense that you're cultivating. Number one is the ticket to entry is competence.
Yes.
Community that feels. Community and communication. So we have 3 C's there, right, but all underpinned by trust.
Yes.
With all of that is just trust. So I don't know how complete that formula is, but it feels
Jeff, you're touching on the key thing. I always feel that in any human to human interaction, the 3 key things are honesty, trust, and respect. You need to respect the person you're talking to. You need to develop a trust, right? And, and you need to be honest. You need to be open. You need to be honest with saying something that went well. And as I said earlier, you need to own your mistakes. You need to be honest about the fact that, hey, I screwed up. This was wrong. I shouldn't have done this, right?
Yeah.
But then you build that trust and you be honest, and you get that respect. And we taught that to girls already. When the girls were in high school, I said, and even on the father of the bride speeches at the weddings, I spoke about the 3 things in communication, especially, of course, in a relationship, in a marriage, right? I mean, trust, honesty, and respect is the basis of a successful marriage.
Yeah. This is brilliant, Paul. So sage advice, and I'm going to challenge you to bring it down to one conversation. If I gave you in this moment the magic wand and you could seed one conversation in the minds of life science CEOs all over the globe, one conversation among probably dozens that you would hope they would have. But if you had to choose one and could seed that in the wave of your wand, what's that one conversation you hope they have in the next week?
Is the importance of building that coherent team, I think. Look, as CEOs, we all have different companies, different technologies. We're all faced with the same challenge of raising money, building the right team. But that coherence, that kind of trust that you build within the team, and how different people do that, different CEOs do that would be great. I love to hear that from other CEOs. And I don't mind, sharing my own thoughts that we just shared already, when we're talking, Jeff. And I think that was great because people had different ways of doing it, and there might be a lot of different ways that are very successful, and some that might be less successful. And look, we all know you learn the most things for things that don't go so well, right? That's the role, that's the lesson in life as well. So yeah, that's what I would love to, to hear from other CEOs. I mean, it's like, what went well, what didn't go well, how did you decide to, to build your team? Yeah, so I think that's, I think that, how do you go about your business? I mean, how do you run your operations? I mean,
and what's the question in there that each of those CEOs could have around team coherence? What's the question that they could ask in their next team meeting about that?
Do you feel as a team that we are providing enough information, and are we communicating often enough? Right? Because the last thing you want to have happen, that either something goes wrong in it, or there is some kind of unrest and it festers, right? Because that is a deflating exercise to a team. And also to make sure that people are aware and see the bigger picture as well as their own role in that, and they feel motivated by that. They want to go and wake up and jump out of bed and go to work for it. And also be allowed to be daring and, do the kind of development that, and look, I think that personal development, also professional development, I understand that as a professional, but also the personal development, how do you build all that? Right? Sorry, I'm cut down my, my cell phone and my thing is buzzing. So, so I think that's,
that's a great, I love that question. There's a lot of power in that. Paul, thank you so much. It's been a really just joyful conversation. I'm wondering if people want to know more about you or to know more about Triumvira, where can we send them?
Well, you can send them look, obviously, I think my email is one thing. There is a website, of course, www.triumvira.com, that people can find on the website a lot of information. But also, if the CEOs want to connect, I mean, it's P. Lammers at triumvira.com, Plammers. Well, it's my last name here, the thing. And I always welcome to talk to people. I like to understand the network and be part of that network.
Nice. We'll put all of that information. We'll put your LinkedIn profile, your email address, and the website, Triumvira's website. Again, thank you for bringing your heart today, and really appreciate everything.
Great job. Great to connect, and looking forward to future interactions.